This podcast contains explicit content.
Hardly Focused
Presents
big, beautiful butt cheeks.
The balance beam.
You are listening to the Acc and Jack Show.
The Acc and Jack Show.
The Acc and Jack Show.
Welcome to the Acc and Jack Show. Starring
God, Oliver Barrett is the only person even tangentially associated with the Acc and Jack Show to have achieved any success in life.
Which is really saying something. When you think about what you and I have done in the last 15 years. We are Acc and Jack, and you can find us at our parent website, hardlyfocused.com. And we are on all of the podcast apps. Just search for Hardly Focused. We're on YouTube at hardlyfocused.com/YouTube. We are doing a special episode here of the Acc and Jack program because it is the 20th of January, the year 2021. And as of about 8.5 hours ago on the East Coast, Joseph Robinette, is that his middle name?
Yep.
Joseph Robinette Biden is the 46th junior. That's right. He's the 46th president of the United States, and Kamala Harris, the vice president, the first of many distinctions. And I am going to begin this by quoting Craig Ferguson. Craig Ferguson, who hosted the Late Late Show on CBS for many, many years, and would begin nearly every episode by proclaiming, "It's a great day for America." And it is. For the first time in, like 4 years, for more than 4 years. Because remember, there was about a year-long period where we were genuinely concerned about what could possibly happen as an outcome of the 2016 election, but at the same time we took it half serious, and we should have taken it a little more seriously because bad things happened.
I remember distinctly 2016, even aside from politics, was one of those years everyone hated because of how many celebrity deaths there were. And it just was one of those years that people on New Year's were saying, "Oh, thank God that year is over. There's no way 2017 could possibly be as bad as that shit year from hell." And I just remember thinking, no, they're all going to be progressively worse from here on out.
Well, back then we weren't necessarily thinking about a global pandemic occurring.
You know, it is funny because while it's true that nobody directly predicted this, in hindsight, a plague shutting down the country is a predictable outcome to electing Donald Trump president. Like, if someone did come back and tell me and say, just so you know, in less than 4 years, the air is going to be toxic, I would say, yeah, that makes sense. I can see that happening.
Yeah, now, granted, this is something that didn't start in America, and it's affecting literally the entire world, but the United States, no surprise, is the worst hit country in the entire world right now for COVID. I honestly would think, like maybe South America or like Middle East, that region, that it would have been pretty bad. But no, it's the U.S. And like California, for example, I think Arizona is the worst of the worst. So, I mean, the problem there with, I think it would be too respectful to call him former President Donald Trump. I'm going to call him ex-President Donald Trump. You don't
died on the way back to his home planet.
you don't say my former wife. You say my ex-wife, and there's usually a degree of animosity, bitterness. I mean, if there's ever a breakup like that, it's very rarely ever on good terms. And
along the same lines, I will now be referring to Trump as that bitch Karen.
that bitch Carol Trump. Which I'll have to mention that later on in this episode. By the way, we're flying by the seat of our pants tonight. Usually I prep these things out, but figured, hey, if Colbert can do it, so can we. 30 minutes of just riffing. So remind me to bring up Joe Exotic. But yeah, ex-President Donald Trump only exacerbated the COVID-19 pandemic by downplaying it, by saying it wasn't serious, by making repeated racist, xenophobic comments about China from where the virus originated. It just taking, let's put it this way, Donald Trump, absolutely fantastic about pouring gasoline onto a fire.
It's really impressive. I think it cannot be overstated enough how many issues that were catastrophic failures of the Trump administration could have been fine or at least better if he literally just did nothing. If Trump had said nothing, kept his mouth shut, and every time anyone asked him about COVID, just said, look, I don't know anything about that. Listen to what my CDC heads say. Then he would have gotten all the credit in the world for this thing being taken seriously, shutting it down earlier, not getting spread as much, if he had just literally done nothing. But instead, he had to actively go out of his way to turn it into a politicized issue, to make wearing a mask something only the pansy liberals do, to make not sneezing in people's face.
You just muted yourself. What did you do? I hear you clicking. I hear you clicking, but yeah, you muted. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
You can hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. How much of my rant got cut off?
No, just like 5 seconds. You're in the middle of saying something about pansy liberals.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Trump just turned the whole culture of taking your health seriously into a culture war, which is the dumbest, most unnecessary thing he could have done. And I think hundreds of thousands of Americans died who didn't need to. You know, I mean, it would have been an absolute catastrophe no matter who was in office. I don't think it's fair to say that the virus was Trump's fault or that, you know, it only happened because of him. I think if Hillary Clinton had been president, there would have been, you know, 100,000 deaths, which is still absolutely would be heartbreaking and just terrible. But that would be a quarter of the deaths under Trump. Because again, he just couldn't keep his mouth shut and tell people to just listen to the scientists and not himself.
Yeah. With Trump, too, it was never just a straight statement. It was never just giving the facts, the straight facts, and letting it go. It was always conjecture. It was always personal opinion, always attacks on other people, other countries, and of course, everybody else's fault but his. And right up until like a week ago, when the coup attempt happened, and he was still spouting his mouth about election fraud and this, that, and the other thing. And it wasn't until that happened and he had his outlets taken away from him is when he finally started getting like releasing statements that were 90% just statements.
Yeah.
A little, still a little bit of Trumpism in there, but largely, largely just statements at that point. The closest you're gonna get in 4 years of him being anything remotely presidential.
Right. And it was a good thing he had his Twitter taken away because, I mean, the man can read off a teleprompter, right? He's given statements, State of the Unions and press conferences before where he sounds fine. And if you were to listen to just that in a vacuum, you'd think, yeah, this guy's an average president, whatever. But then he could never make it 24 full hours without going to Twitter and unsaying everything he just said.
Yeah. Well, I know. I think his Facebook is back, or it came back. I don't know if it got taken away again. But his Twitter, thankfully, will never be given back to him, unless he finds another way to circumvent it. I really wish that at John Barron 1946 was really him.
That was funny.
I really wish that was him, but it's over. It's finally over. Today was. And this is going to sound cliche, but today was really like the first day when all that happened. Like I actually sitting in my studio by myself today at 12 o'clock when Biden was officially inaugurated. And I actually cheered.
Yeah.
I actually did. I cheered. And then I messaged several people and said the same exact thing to all of them. Quote, "It's finally fucking over.
My butt has unclenched for the first time in 4 years."
Well, that leads me to my first question for you, Acc. So we're in a honeymoon phase right now, and we're going to be for the next several weeks while things settle down. Are you optimistic that Joe Biden can do a 180 from everything that Trump did in the last 4 years?
Yes. I mean, I think he's already off to an extremely good start just through executive orders in the first 6 hours of his presidency. We rejoined the Paris Climate Accord. He's halted all progress on the border wall. He's undone the bans on immigration from Muslim countries. I know one of his top priorities is the release and reuniting of all immigrant children who were separated from their families. I think... that's one thing a lot of people don't appreciate is they kind of hope that, a president will just sort of be able to come in there and bring about the new utopia they want. But a lot of effort is going to be done just bringing us back to 2015. Like, we can't progress until we've undone all of the bad shit that's happened in the past 4 years. So, I mean, I think if people who are, more ideologically left than I am are hoping for immediate access or immediately starting on canceling all student debt or Medicare for all, I would be hesitant to expect that, but I don't think we should underplay just how big an accomplishment it is to not have the active detriments of the Trump executive orders weighing us down.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be a huge boon. I think that's going to be immediately helpful to a lot of people. I think Biden's proposed stimulus packages for COVID relief are extremely comprehensive. I know there was some grumbling because the monthly checks are $1,400 instead of $2,000, but it's got 15% increased spending for food stamps, massive, increases in spending for childcare. It's, a huge handout of wealth for those who desperately need it. And that's just the kind of thing you would never, that the Republicans fought tooth and nail against throughout the whole past year. So the fact that we're 1 day into it and there's already multiple of these relief packages on the horizon now is worth celebrating.
So in just the course of 8.5 hours, signing a bunch of executive orders that reverse what it was done over the course of 4 years.
Yeah,
that's amazing. The $1,400 stimulus packages. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, but isn't that like the difference between like what was already given out versus what was proposed?
Exactly. So, yeah, the original checks were 600. People wanted, so then there was talk of $2,000 stimulus, and a lot of people wanted that to mean 2,000 on top of the 600. But this bout is 1,400, so 2,000 total. But again, that's just from the very first relief package, of which there are multiple additional ones to come in the coming weeks. So
what sucks about that? Yeah. What sucks about that with the relief package is, I was just thinking about like the car payment I just made today, and how that was more than 3/4 of what the relief check was that went out a few weeks ago. Like, just, Godspeed to anyone who's just living on this right now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I will say the one cause for concern that I do sympathize with about Biden is he pays a lot of lip service to the ideas of bipartisanship and unity, which I know a lot of people aren't super into right now because, the conservatives attempted to overthrow an election like a week ago.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of this worry of, is Biden just saying he wants bipartisan and he wants us to unite because he knows it sounds good? Or does he actually think it's going to happen? Because if he really thinks that, he might be an idiot, because there has been no indication whatsoever that the Republican Party is backing down from its complete death cult agenda that it's taken over the past 4 years. I mean, we've now got QAnon congresspeople in the Republican Party who believe that Donald Trump was going to, at noon today, initiate martial law, broadcast on emergency channels that the storm has now begun, and proceed the military tribunals resulting in the executions of Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and other prominent liberal deep state elites. And I know there's a desire to laugh this off as completely ridiculous, because it is, and it's objectively funny. But there are now people who are elected lawmakers who believe these things. And I don't know how we pull back from that. I really don't.
I wonder if it was a dormant beast in the last, I don't know how long, because if I remember correctly, at least for our lifetimes, our respective lifetimes, it's been a largely Republican controlled everything. Like, Obama was, a Democrat, but so we had 8 years of that. But I just wonder.
Republicans won the House in 2010. So he only had full Democratic control for 2 years. And then since then, Republicans have had a huge grip on the national agenda.
And even then, we're right now holding on by a thread because it was a even split. But I just wonder if just everything that we saw with Republicans, the conservatives, if it was a dormant beast that, let's use social media as an example, because this is something we talked about in a recent Hardly Focused episode, how if Trump were elected president before social media was the thing. I wonder if social media was the water that you pour on the plant.
Yeah,
that
I think so.
That caused the seeds there to germinate. Because it really is, when you think about it, frightening. Just the mindsets that people have. The Trump supporters, just the way they think and the comments they make, and even with the QAnon and all of that, it's really frightening. And it seems like we're not going to be able to go back from it. It's like the neo-Nazis, right? Like that started, and there are still people out there that take Adolf Hitler's word as gospel and still believe in that 70 years later, 80 years later.
And the more you rebuke them, the more adamant they become, the more determined they are to believe that, despite the fact that everyone hates them and wants them to shut up.
Yeah. Well, on that note, Trump now talking about starting his own political party.
Yeah.
Which that's like quitting a podcast so you can go and start your own podcast.
Yeah, a thing only idiots do.
Yeah. Like that it's the Bender quote from Futurama.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he's gonna go start his own political party with blackjack and hookers. And the only thing
forget the party.
Yeah. The only thing that'll be there for Trump will be the hookers.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure he doesn't care because he has no loyalty to anyone but himself, but that would be the biggest boon imaginable to the Democrats if he went and tried to start a third party, because Trump is still extremely popular among registered Republicans. Now, he's the least popular president in recorded American history. He never cracked 50% approval at any point in his 4 years in office, which has never happened before. He left office at the least popular he's ever been. He is the only president in 100 years to, in 4 years, cause his party to lose the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. He's just been a catastrophic failure on every single level, absolutely rebuked as much as you can possibly imagine. And yet he's got like an 85% approval rating among registered Republicans. So the problem, even pretending he just goes away, flies off to an island, and we never hear from him again, there's already a problem that the Republican Party has to address if they want any hope of winning in future elections. Is, do we acknowledge the Trump supporter beast that now lives within us and continue to water them and help them grow? Or do we shut that shit down and try to recollect ourselves as a serious conservative party of reasonable adults? And as of right now, I have no idea what direction they're going to go with it. I mean, I think Mitch McConnell has been hoping they can go in the pretend Trump never happened direction. And, he just wants to, say, oh, Trump never heard of him, and then, go back to eating small berries and lettuce and other things turtles like to eat.
Walking slowly from point A to point B.
But I don't know how it's going to work, because like I was just saying, you've got these Congress people like that Marjorie Greene, and there's one other one, but they're wild, insane, Trump-loving, gun-toting, murder all liberals, fuck your feelings, get triggered snowflake, like just weird, aggressive conspiracy theorist Republicans. And I just don't see how those two elements are going to be able to come together and reunite anytime soon. And if Trump comes in and makes a third party that they can actually siphon votes off from, I mean, that would just be the end of it. I don't see how Democrats could lose any elections for the next 10 years until there's a total political realignment.
Yeah. It would be really interesting to see a ballot in a few years that has Republicans, Democrats, and then your Green Rainbow, your Libertarian Party, the ones that always show up and always bring in like 1% at most of the vote.
Yeah.
But it's frightening to think about the possibility that, and he's calling it the Patriot Party, if you didn't hear that.
Yeah. Oh, I heard.
Yeah.
I'm not, that sounds right up his alley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
There's one thing, real patriots love, it's committing treason.
God, and I can only think, well, I just, it's frightening to think about that the Patriot Party could actually draw in more than a percentage of the vote, because it likely will, just based on the fact that 70 million people fucking voted for him in this election. But God, I can just imagine crazed people too, just running around yelling, "I'm a patriot."
Right.
The last big thing that the word patriot was associated with, as far as I know, was the Patriot Act, which came about after 9/11, which just caused a lot of problems for people.
Yeah. Doesn't exactly have the best connotation these days.
No, it's people like associate it with America, but it's a word now that might have meant one thing many hundreds of years ago, but it doesn't mean that now. The only thing it means right now is a football team that is not going to the Super Bowl this year, because instead Tom Brady with the Bucks is on his way there. So anyway.
Yes, sports. Yeah, I wonder, who do you think he'd get to run? Like, so, I mean, I guess his first choice would be himself, but the guy's a 75-year-old obese man who had COVID. The idea that he might even still be alive in 2024 is not a sure thing.
Yeah, that's why I don't take any of that seriously.
So let's say he does start the party, but then, bows out and has somebody else take over in his stead. Do you think it'll be Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka, someone like fucking Ted Nugent, like just some other celebrity loudmouth crazy person?
Oh, Mike Liddell. How about Mike Liddell?
Yeah. Or, God, what's that? The pro wrestler, Jesse Ventura.
Controlled dynamite explosions.
Yeah, like I can't imagine. Like you're gonna have like a respected but ultimately boring person like John Kasich leading the Republican ticket, and then just Joey the ranting homeless guy from your local bus stop leading the Patriot Party, because that's the only thing that distinguishes the Trump Republicans from other Republicans is insanity. Right? Trump politically, in terms of his policy issues, is pretty comparable to most Republicans. The difference is that he's a lunatic, and his supporters like that about him. They want a presidential candidate who's psychotic like they are.
It's everyone's grandparents.
Yeah.
It's what you were seeing old people posting on social media like 10 years ago, and quoting news sources that you never heard of. And that is exactly, I wouldn't say that's what Donald Trump turned people into. He was just part of that. And he made it famous. He made it popular among people.
I think that's why he had so much unexpected success, is because many Republicans have tried to utilize people like that, but Donald Trump was the first one who actually was a person like that. A lot of people debate this still. People on the left and the right wonder, was Trump an idiot, or was he a genius who was playing an idiot to win the votes of idiots? And I am very firmly in the camp of, no, his brain melted years ago, and every insane conspiracy theory that came out of his mouth, he absolutely believed.
Yeah.
I don't think he was play acting. I think, and I mean, he was always sort of the avatar of capitalist excess and absurd greed. But if you watch interviews with him from the 90s, he was cogent. He was coherent. He could make a point. He could be charismatic. He could make jokes. He can't do that now. He is incapable of it. Like, try to imagine current day Donald Trump telling a joke. He can't do it. He would just get bored halfway through, say, and anyway, fuck Hillary, and then shit himself. Like, he just has any ability to be a functioning human being in his brain is melted away to nothing. So, and I think that's why all these supporters who didn't want to bother coming out to vote for John McCain, didn't want to bother coming out to vote for Mitt Romney, saw Donald Trump and went, I can't quite put my finger on it, but something about this guy reminds me of me. And that something was complete brain rot.
No, well, I mentioned just a moment ago Mike Liddell, but that is someone who is, if you think that even if Trump somehow was just putting on an act and it was all a facade, then you have someone like Mike Liddell who believes it. It's cult brainwashing, who is still convinced that Trump won the election. That was convinced, and probably right this moment now, 9 hours after Biden has been inaugurated, Mike Liddell probably is still convinced that Trump is going to take office, and he's just waiting for it.
Any minute now. Any minute now.
Yeah, it's there are people out there just they're just that psychotic and that rabid. So let's wrap this up. Acc, your final thoughts on our new president.
Optimism. I think a lot of people preface their statements of Joe Biden by saying he wasn't my first choice in the primary. And that's true for me as well. He wasn't my first. I think he was like my sixth choice. But out of like 38 candidates, that's still pretty good. But all things considered, I'm optimistic because I think if there's one thing Joe Biden's good at, it's being the median Democrat. And I think he's going to have a unique ability, partially just from being a likable old white guy, but he's going to have more luck than many bringing all factions of the party together and surrounding himself with a truly representative, diverse cabinet, diverse advisors, who I think are going to be able to keep a lot of various competing factions of the Democrats, if not happy, then content. Which, given what I just said about the fracturing Republican Party, I think bodes very well for the Democrats. So I'm optimistic.
I agree. The only thing that there's two things that concern me is what you mentioned earlier about the unity thing. Mm-hmm. When I was listening to his speech and he said something about like befriending our enemies, like No, I mean that's you're treading on thin ice on that one.
Yes, you're welcome to try, buddy. Just don't hold your breath.
Yeah, and just his age. I mean, oldest president ever elected. Yeah. I mean, Trump was the oldest president ever elected. Now Biden surpassed that, but he's pushing 80. I mean, sure. There's plenty of people out there who are still sharp as a tack, even at 100. Biden seems like he's knock on wood, relatively healthy. I didn't see him pulling a Harrison and giving a 10-hour long speech out in freezing cold today. But I'm just concerned just because he's up there in age, if he like runs for a second term in 4 years and actually wins, then you be concerned because he's going to be 82.
That'll be interesting to see if he does that or not, or if he steps down.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, I don't recall any president in the modern age willingly stepping down and not running for a second term due to anything like that.
No.
Drawing a blank.
No,
happened.
The only president to ever actually resign was Nixon, and that was due to scandal. Everyone else is, like Reagan, for example, was at the time the oldest president and was on the cusp of Alzheimer's.
Right. And he knew going in for re-election that his Alzheimer's was getting worse, and they just decided, fuck it, we'll worry about that later.
And there are people that regard him as like one of the best presidents ever.
Oh, yeah.
But that's debatable. I'm not saying I'm a Reagan fan or against him. I'm just saying
he's controversial.
Yeah.
And again, I think if Biden does croak, I would say that all things considered, it's good that he is a politician who, again, is more of just sort of the blank slate that represents the Democratic Party, more so than like an ideologue himself. Like, if Trump had died in office, I don't think there was any way to replace him with a Trump-like figure. Like, again, it was people voted for Trump specifically regardless of the party he was part of. And I don't think Republicans could like just up and replace him. And I kind of feel the same way about, say, if Bernie Sanders, who is older than Biden, if he had won the primary, there isn't really anyone who's like Bernie in the Democratic Party. So it's sort of the same thing where it's like people who liked him wanted to vote for him specifically, not the Democrats. Biden, on the other hand, I think if he does either die or resign for health reasons or because of his age and is replaced by Kamala Harris or someone else steps up to run in 2024, I think most Biden supporters will just shrug and be okay with that because they're just going to be ideologically similar to Biden because he's a pretty center of the road guy.
I actually, in the primaries a few years ago, voted for Bernie.
Yeah.
And it was because I was concerned about Biden's age. He was up there. I know Bernie's older, but there was a lot of concern back then about how sharp Biden was and is. But my mindset also was I'm going to vote for anyone who is not Donald Trump, where I'm also not throwing my vote away.
Yeah.
So, two things just quickly. I did say I wanted to mention this. So first, Bernie stealing the show today with the memes. Oh my God. Just for a solid 4 hours today, my news feed on Facebook was just nothing but Bernie Sanders wearing his mittens, sitting there by himself, looking like he didn't want to be there.
I am once again wearing this same coat.
So there was that. And then Mr. Joe Exotic.
Fucking bitch. Wanna know why these plants are dead? Carol fucking Baskin. Wanna know how that turd got there? Carol fucking Baskin. Wanna know how I turned gay? Carol fucking Baskin. Wanna know why I can't play a chord right? Carol fucking Baskin. This here dog used to be a tiger. You wanna know how it changed? Carol fucking Baskin. Fucking bitch. Fucking bitch. Fucking bitch. Bitch.
Joe Exotic genuinely disappointed and taken aback that Donald Trump did not pardon him.
Yeah, I was surprised when I heard his name was in consideration. I thought that would absolutely not surprise me if Donald Trump did pardon him. Because not to get too preachy, I enjoyed Tiger King. I watched it when it came out because everyone was talking about it and the memes were great. It was an experience. I was glad to partake in that fever dream with all of my peers.
Hey, all you cool cats and kittens.
But one thing that did upset me was how many people came away from it with the viewpoint that Joe Exotic was relatable and Carol Baskins was the evil one. Now, I'm not saying Carol Baskins was great or wonderful or anything, but it just seemed like kind of a rehashing of 2016, where you've got two extremely unpopular candidates in Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, and way more people were willing to give the benefit of the doubt to the man than the woman.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of happened again with Joe Exotic, where it's like, well, yeah, sure, he threatened to kill her and had an assassin hired to go fuck her up and spent every waking moment of his life obsessing over her and calling her a bitch and threatening her. But I mean, she was a bitch, so I like Joe Exotic. It did kind of bother me that was the takeaway from the show. And in that regard, it would not have surprised me at all if Trump had pardoned Joe Exotic.
And they were seriously anticipating. He even had a limo waiting in front of the complex where he's housed right now. A limo was parked, ready to pick him up had he been pardoned. And that limo drove away with no passengers in it.
Well, that's funnier. Same with Edward Snowden and Julian Assange both begging Trump for pardons in the last 24 hours. And
Yeah, still Lil Wayne got it.
yeah.
Lil Wayne, dumbass Bannon, a bunch of other rappers. So
Jared Kushner's dad.
Yeah. So Joe Exotic remains in prison for another couple decades. Worth mentioning, too, that I don't think Tiger King would have been as popular as it got were it not for the pandemic. Because that premiered right when the pandemic started.
Exactly. It was like the first shared thing everyone in lockdown did together.
Yeah.
And I like those kind of moments. I get into it whenever like a show is really trending and everyone's talking about it. I like it. I like feeling like there's this big unifying thing that we're all a part of.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It gets to the point where I sit down and I say, I have to watch this. It's not like I have to watch this. It's if I don't, then I'm going to be a pariah and I'm not going to be cool. And when someone says this to me,
Hey, you cool cats and kittens.
I'm not going to know what it means. Now with like Among Us, for example, I have not played that. And I'm now at this point, it's almost on principle. Can I go my lifetime without playing Among Us? But see, now it's one of those things where like everyone's doing it except for me. But when it came to like when it came to Tiger King, it's like, all right, I'll do it. It's like I did the same thing with Stranger Things a few years ago. Like, all right, I have to watch this because everyone's saying it's fantastic, and then I walked away telling everybody, watch this goddamn show. Holy shit!
Yeah.
So cool. All right, Acc, thank you very much for doing this. This was fun. We should do it again sometime soon.
Yeah, like within the next 4 to 6 business days.
Agreed. All right. We will leave it at that. We will talk at you next time. See you. Bye.
From FSN, I'm Steve Moore.